Okay guys, welcome back. This is Professor Hank, and in this video I'm going to show you some functions in the C++ library for working with C strings. So, just briefly reminder, what are C strings? Arrays of characters that have a null terminator at the end of them, right? So these are, brought forward from the C programming language where everything you did with strings in that language was arrays of characters. Okay, and C++ still has them to maintain backwards compatibility, if nothing else. Um, so, in this video, we're just going to talk about some of the functions that you can use to make dealing with them easier if you have to use them in your C++ program. Now, if you're not sure, if you're a little fuzzy, you're like, what's a C string? What's a string literal? What's a string data type? What's a string variable? I got another video that walks you through that in detail, explaining the differences between those three things: string data type, string literal, C string. And so I'll leave a link to it in the description below so you can go back and refresh your memory if you need to. Okay, in this video, we're just going to focus on functions that are in the library that make dealing with C strings easier. Okay, so how do you access these functions? You have to use the header file, or have to include the header file cstring. Okay, in C that would be string.h. In C++, all the C++ versions of these libraries that are in the C library all begin with C, right? And you drop the .h. So here's the functions we're going to look at, and there's actually a lot more than these in C string, but these are just the few that we're going to take a look at briefly. So we're going to look at strlen, and strlen tells you how long the string is. strcat enables you to do string concatenation relatively easily. strcpy allows you to copy one string from one location to another, overriding the destination. strstr allows you to locate substrings within a string. StringComp, that allows you to compare two C strings against each other easily to see if they're the same or if one comes before the other. We'll look at alternate versions of StringCat and StringCappy, and this is StringCat and StringCappy, and what these allow you to do is to concatenate or copy not the entire source string, but a section of it. Okay, so I'll show you how to use those in a program. Now, I will mention that Visual Studio does not like StringCat, does not like StringCappy. Okay, so you'll get a compile time error if you have these, because it's going to warn you. It's going to tell you, hey, these things have been deprecated. Don't use these anymore. Use StringCat or StringCappy_s. And in a subsequent video, I'll cover those. But since my videos are primarily for my class, this is what we're covering this week. So that's what I'm gonna do. And if you're in my class and you're gonna be playing around with these on your own within Visual Studio, then you're gonna have to use this preprocessor directive to enable you to compile your code, right? So this is just saying, hey, I'm Visual Studio. I know. Shut up. Let me use it anyway. Okay. You can find out more about this library and all of the different functions that are defined therein by visiting c++.com reference cstring. I'll leave this link in the description as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with a program. All right, so I've got Visual Studio already set up and ready to go. I got my hashtag include, or my pound include C string, that's giving me access to all these functions and more. IO stream for C in and C out. And there's that pound defined just to tell the Visual Studio compiler, yeah, I know there's newer versions of StringCat and StringCappy, but I want to work with these guys. I have a very good reason for doing it, and I'm going to do it, so shut up. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and see how strlen works. So I'll start this off by creating an array of characters, and I'll call it str for string, and I'll just make it 50 characters long. Okay, and I'll initialize it with hello. Okay, so this is a C string, and it is a string literal. So in memory, you've got HELLO and the null terminator right next to each other, and we've assigned all those characters to this array right here. Okay, so now if I want to know, if I wanted to programmatically find out how long that string was, I can use the strlen function. So I can pass to these functions as arguments character arrays, character pointers, or actual string literals. So for example, I can do that, okay? And that's going to return the number of characters, not including the null terminator, that are in the C string. So this is going to give us 5, okay? So I'll go ahead and store that in an integer variable, and then I'll print out that integer variable. I don't have to. I could just send strlength straight to cout, but I'll just show you that you can do this, okay? So we should see 5 on the output, right? And there you go, because that's how many characters there are. Now, if I were to instead put a string right inside of those parentheses, passing it as an argument, maybe I'll do Bob, right? Well, then that's going to be 3 characters in that string that are going to be stored. That 3 is going to go into size. Now in memory, it's actually 4 because the null terminator, C++ automatically puts that at the end for you. But for us, that null terminator, it's for record keeping, for the language to keep track of where a string begins and where it ends in memory. But Bob's got 3 characters in it, so that's what strlen returns. Okay, and I could also create a pointer to one of the characters in this C string that's within the string. So I'll just go ahead and have it point to the very beginning. Okay, so the memory address for H is stored in string here. Now it's going to also be stored in P here. My point for showing you this is that, look, you can also pass pointers to C strings, and it's still going to work, right? So we see 5 this time. Why? Because hello has got 5 characters in it, and P is pointing to H. Okay, so that's how strlen works. So let me go ahead and show you how StringCat works. Okay, in StringCat, you call it just like that. And so the first argument is the destination array, where you want your modified string to go, and then the second argument is the source. So for example, what if I wanted to put world on the end? Okay, so we'll print out the contents of the character array. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to add to the end of hello inside that array world. Okay, and so this is how I can do it. Okay, and then we'll print out the updated C string that's stored inside that array. Okay, so we're going to see hello and then hello world. Why is there no space between the O and the W? Well, because I didn't put one. Okay, so if I want one, I'll just hit that space bar. Now you can see hello world. So hello space world is now inside of character array string. So that's how StringCat works. Now you have to be careful in that there's nothing stopping you from making a really super duper long string that, when combined with the C string inside of the target array, would be bigger than the target array. So you can write past the end of your target array, right? So remember, it's up to you, the programmer, to make sure that that doesn't happen if you're going to use this function. Okay, so let's take a look at strcpy. Okay, and what strcpy does is it copies the contents of one C string into another, right? So let's copy into this array, how about world? Okay, so it's going to take this world and it's going to copy it into our target array. So this is our source and this is our target. Okay, and let's see how string changes after that. Okay, so line 11, there's hello, and then we copied world into string, overwriting the hello that was already there. So that way on line 14, when we print out the contents of the array, it now shows you world. Okay, now what happens if I only do whoa, right? A string that's shorter. Let's see what the difference is. Okay, so you can see that whoa completely and utterly replaced hello. Okay, so what strcpy does is it searches for a substring within the C string. Okay, this is too long, so I'll make it a little bit bigger. And as soon as it finds a match, okay, it's going to return the memory address of the first character that matches the substring, right? Or the first character of the substring that matches the argument that you specify. Okay, so stree. So we want to search within the C string in the stree array. We want to search for the string how. Okay, so what's going to happen is that stree is going to just search over this string, and then as soon as it finds a match how, it will return the memory address of H right here. Okay, so I could assign that to a pointer. Okay, so then P will be pointing to H, right, which is within the character array stree. Okay, but then I could send that to cout. And so remember what I just described to you for cout is that it starts at a particular memory location, in this case H, and then just starts printing out each character, right, until it hits that null terminator and then stops. So what we did is we got a memory address for the first character in the array that's part of the string that we were searching for. Okay, you can do that. We could also then store that in some other array, right? So maybe I'll call this a dest. Okay, and then I could do strcpy into dest the C string whose memory address begins at P. Okay, and then I could cout the dest. So I mean, you can copy these things in all kinds of different ways. Okay, so that's essentially how I could copy a substring from one C string to somewhere else, right? I could make a duplicate of it. So how are you got copied into the array dest. So now the original array stree still exists, right? This original C string in dest still exists, or in stree, excuse me. But now that substring, how are you, has been copied into dest. Okay, so line 17, hello world, how are you? That's from my original array from line 9, and then dest is a copy of the substring, right? How are you, which got copied into dest, and so I printed them both out one after the other. Okay, if there's no match, then stree, if it doesn't find what it's looking for, like let's say that I search for doggy, right? Then what it'll return is null terminator. It returns null basically. So I'll go ahead and just cout P so you can see it. Okay, and then I'll just get rid of this stuff. Okay. Right, so we had ourselves a nice little error because null, right? So it returned null. There's nothing to print. It's not a valid memory address, right? So if you want to be careful, right, to avoid that, you could wrap it up inside of an if statement, right? If P. Now that's going to evaluate to false, so you're not going to say anything, right? Because null is false, okay? But if we were looking for how, right? Now a valid memory address is going to be returned by stree, and now we've got no problem. We'll get past that if. So that's how you can protect yourself. You know, you can check to see, you know, did you find a substring within the string that starts with how? If so, then there's going to be a valid memory address here, and this is going to evaluate the true, and then we can go ahead and print it out. Otherwise, as we saw, null is going to be returned by stree, and then that if statement is going to evaluate false, and so we won't have our crash. Okay, so that is how stree works. Now let's talk about strcomp. Okay, so the way strcomp works is it compares strings against each other. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create you know, a couple of strings here. We'll do string hello and string world. Okay. And so what you do is you pass to string comp, the two strings that you want to compare against each other, right? And string comp, depending on if these strings are the same or if they're different, is going to return a different integer, okay? So let's see what integer it returns when we try to compare hello and world, okay? So in this case, it's going to return -1. Okay, if it returns a negative number, that means that lexicographically, the first argument comes before the second argument. Okay, so let's just do this again. But this time, we'll pass B first, and then A second. So this is going to return 1. Okay, as you will see. Okay, because in this case, the second argument comes before the first, lexicographically, right? Because hello comes before world. So you can say if you got a minus, that minus means that this guy comes before this guy, right? Otherwise, it's the opposite. Now, if they're the same, right? So let's say we do something like this. Hi. Hi. Right, that's going to return 0. Okay. So you see how it returns 0? So you can test for these values as part of an if statement, right? So if you wanted to see if two strings were the same, if two C strings were the same, then you could put all of that inside of a if statement, say, or inside of a loop, the test expression for those guys. And if they're the same, then strcomp is going to return 0, and so then this will evaluate the true. And then you could say something like, well, see how they are the same. Else, see how they are different. Okay, and so what we're going to see on the screen, we're going to see that they are different because, what got returned here, right, was -1 because A came before B, right? Hello comes before world. Now, if you wanted to see if one was less than the other, right, then all you have to do is just change this to, say, check for less than 0. So this is going to be, it's going to return negative if the string in A is actually less than the string in B. If A comes before B lexicographically. So this is going to evaluate the true because hello comes before world, right? So the first argument string comes before the second, right? That's going to be true. So this is how you can see if one string comes before another. You could use that as part of, there you go, as part of your sorting algorithm, for example. Okay, so that's how StringComp works. So the last two I want to show you are StringCat and StringCappy. And these are very similar to StringCat and StringCappy, except for you're specifying how many characters of the source C string you actually want to copy. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, so let's create a character array. We'll call it dest. Okay, and I'll make it 20 characters long, and I'll initialize it with just hi. Okay, and so then what I'll do is I'll call StringCat, and I want to add to the end of hi in the dest array, I don't know, maybe there, right? Now, if I do that, by using StringCat, I have to provide a third argument, which is an integer, which specifies, well, how many of these characters do you actually want to add to the end of it? So if I wanted all of them, I could, type 5, okay? But if I only wanted, say, the first 2 of them, then I could just specify 2, right? So let's print out the contents of the array after StringCat has done its business. Okay, so you can see there's the hth, right? Because it was high, and then I just copied the 2 characters, right? And then you can experiment. What if I did change that to 5, right? Well, then you're going to see the high there because I said, yeah, copy all of them. Okay, so that's how StringCat works. StringCappy does the same thing. It's just that instead of starting at the end, right, instead of adding to the end like the cat version does, it starts with element 0, right? So let's say that this had high in it, and I just wanted to copy the first character instead, the T, instead of the whole thing. Then I could do StringCappy, and then you can see that we copied just the T to the first element, overriding the first element in dest. So why do we still see the I? Same reason, or similar to what we were talking about with strcpy. It goes ahead and just copies the T, overriding the H. Okay. Now, what if I did something a little bit longer? Maybe I do 4 characters. Well, in that case, it's going to copy the THER. Okay. So that's how that works. That's it. It gives you some options there. Okay, now remember, if you want to use StringCat, StringCappy, you got to put in, with Visual Studio, you got to put this preprocessor directive in there. Let's say that I didn't have it, and then I tried to use StringCappy. Okay, you're going to see that it's gonna crap all over itself, right? It's going to freak out, right? So there were build errors, and it tells you right here, hey, use strcpy _s instead. And that's because the _s version, there's some protections in there that make it a little bit, that make it safer. I'll go ahead and leave a link to an article discussing the differences on those if you're interested in reading more about strcpy _s. Okay. All right. So I think that's everything that I wanted to talk to you about in this video. So we talked about functions in the C string library: strlen, strcat, strcpy, strstr, strcmp. Some alternate versions of those, and also how to get Visual Studio to play nicely with those functions. Okay. All right. That's everything. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.